Hey guys, and welcome to today's video where I wanted to talk about a bit of a tricky subject, something I have noticed throughout my time on YouTube, and though it can get very frustrating sometimes, I try not to talk about it in case, I don't know, I come across mean or insensitive or something. Now I know Go Herping and Mike Titula have made videos on this subject before, and it's basically about people asking YouTubers for veterinary advice. Now, I'm all for helping people out. I try to reply to all the comments on my newest videos. I help out on Instagram and Twitter and so on, and I think sometimes this can be beneficial. For example, if you have a minor issue that can be fixed at home and people have tips and tricks that actually work, then perfect. Like a couple of weeks back, I was trimming my guinea pig's nails, and one I just cut a little too short and he started bleeding. Now, did I freak out? Yes, and I also looked it up on Google. But like, this wasn't an emergency, a vet wasn't needed unless for some reason the bleeding didn't stop, and I found a forum where someone else had asked what to do and people had answered. In situations like that, coming together and helping one another is perfect. However, the main problem I want to focus on is when you get comments like, "Help, my gecko is sick." Now firstly, with comments like this, like, it'd be better if you just expanded on what you were actually talking about. I mean, you could say my gecko is sick, but do you mean it's actually throwing up? Or is it just too skinny? Or is it too fat? Or is its leg hanging off? You know, be a little more specific. But also, when I get comments like this, I usually will just reply, "Go to the vets." I'm not a vet. I cannot do anything through my computer screen. I cannot check your gecko for parasites. I don't even think I'd be able to identify one. I don't have access to medicine, nor would I be able to give you any. You know, like, I can do my best, but if your gecko is in a really bad way, you need to see a vet. Now, some people will reply and say, "Okay, thank you, no problem, I will see a vet," but sadly, oftentimes you'll see people say that they can't afford the vets, or even worse, there's not even a vet in their area. Now, it's not really your fault that there aren't vets operating nearby, but if you are taking on any kind of pet, you need to check that there is a vet in your area beforehand and that you have money for one. After all, pets are not necessities. You don't need one, nobody is forcing you to get one. If you can't afford one right now, just be patient, save up your money and get one when you're in a better position. I had to save for 3 years to get my first gecko. I know the struggle. I also understand that there are a lot of people who are quite young when they get their geckos, so going to the vets is really up to their parents whether they actually take you and maybe even pay for the service. Now, I've had people tell me that their parents refuse to take their gecko because a new one would be cheaper than seeing a vet, which is such an awful way of thinking, and I do really feel bad for the kid who owns a gecko. But I feel like if you are younger and you are going to rely on your parents in this, you have to talk about the fact that at some point they may need to see a vet. Now, leopard geckos are pretty hardy reptiles. I have spent way over £1,000 on vet bills for just my rodents alone, which is massive in comparison to my geckos. Honestly, they barely cost me anything. However, that doesn't mean that you'll never have to see a vet. Make a little vet fund, put away a bit of money, and one day that may actually save your gecko's life. To add to this, I did want to touch upon the topic of rescuing geckos. There are a lot of people who claim they rescue geckos, whether that's from a pet shop or a previous bad owner. However, when they seek advice from me, and I explain that maybe the gecko is skinny because it has parasites and you really have to get that tested and checked at the vets, they'll say, "Oh, well, I can't afford it." I know it may sometimes feel like you're doing a good thing, but if you're rescuing an animal, but you can't actually afford to get that animal help, you're just prolonging the suffering. Now, don't get me wrong, I know there are a lot of you who rescue geckos and completely transform their life for the good. You're not the people I'm talking about. But when it comes to comments, I see the good, the bad, the ugly, and sadly there have been some awful so-called rescue situations. This is similar to when people take on geckos that have been paired together, so maybe two males, a male and a female, or two females. Like, these aren't good combinations, and when the geckos start either fighting or breeding, the person will message me and say, "What do I do?" And when I tell them, you know, you need to separate them, or if you've got an injured gecko, take it to the vet, you might have babies coming along, get an incubator, they're like, "Oh, I can't afford another setup, I can't feed the babies, I can't afford an incubator, I don't want to see the vet. Like, if you had done your research on these animals, you would know that they shouldn't be paired, so if you saw a pairing that you were going to rescue, you would be prepared to separate them. I know at the moment things can be tricky, and it's completely understandable that if something goes wrong with your pet, you want to seek immediate advice, and I really appreciate that you feel I am a good person to ask, but there is only so much I can do. Yes, I can give you tips on how to get your gecko to eat, on why your gecko isn't eating, why it keeps scratching at the glass. I've done countless videos on supplements to the point where probably the word supplement triggers a large portion of my audience. But for minor things, the information is out there, whether you find it on my channel or elsewhere. But if you do genuinely think there's something wrong with your pet, please see someone who has trained for years to fix these problems. As I said, I'm sure the majority of you do the right thing, look after your geckos well, you're well prepared, you've done your research. I just needed to get this out, Quarantine is tough and I needed a rant, but I will leave both Go Herping's video and Mike's video down below on this topic if you want to check theirs out as well. But yeah, thank you for watching, guys, and goodbye.